Donald Trump's latest remarks that Seoul won't lift sanctions on Pyongyang without the approval of Washington. 청와대 response, such comments highlight the need for discussions and consent between the allies before making such decisions, that it proves there's close consultations between South Korea and the United States. Bank of Korea's preliminary data on the nation's current account balance for August shows a current account surplus is maintained for the 78th consecutive month. The BOK points out the primary income account surplus for the month more than doubled from the same period last year. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. Our starting point is again the International Fleet Review. President Moon Jae-in delivered a speech at the event stressing the necessity of a strong military in opening a new era of peace. He also spoke to Jeju residents who opposed the construction of a new naval base there. Hwang Ho-jun has our top story.
The South Korean president addressed the navies of 47 other countries, sending them a message of encouragement. He was speaking on board the president's official naval ship, the Int'l, a landing vessel named after a famous landmark on Jeju Island.
그러나 세계의 해군은 공존과 협력의 지혜를 키워왔습니다. 함께 새로운 도전에 맞섰습니다. 공동의 노력으로 평화를 가져왔습니다.
The International Fleet Review was held at the Jeju Civilian Military Complex Port, or Jeju Naval Base, situated near Gangjong Village on Jeju's southern coast. As stated in the event's slogan, Jeju where peace starts, President Moon reiterated that Seoul and Pyongyang have declared an end to military confrontation and have begun their journey to peace, and that such peace can only be maintained through a strong military.
나는 대한민국 해군이 한반도의 평화를 넘어 동북아와 세계 평화에 기여할 수 있도록 더욱 강하게 만들어 나갈 것입니다.
In fact, President Moon was looking to make peace more locally as well.
제주도에 해군 기지가 건설되면서 제주도민들이 겪게 된 아픔을 깊이 위로합니다. 강정마을 주민들의 고통과 상처를 치유하는 데에도 최선을 다하겠습니다.
Many were arrested in protest during the base's construction, some arguing that the base would have a negative impact on the environment, and others insisting the project was pushed ahead by the U.S. to deter China rather than by South Korea to enhance its own defense. During Thursday's press briefing, the Blue House spokesperson emphasized that President Moon has always wanted to address the pain and conflict of the Jeju residents, which is why he decided to go to Jeju for the event in person. Soon after the fleet review, President Moon held a separate meeting with the village residents to offer them some words of consolation. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Today, the South Korean Navy held the main event of the 2018 Jeju International Fleet Review. Participants and spectators soaked in the majestic sight of powerful warships sailing by. Kan Young-woo brings us the highlights.
With 5 maritime patrol aircraft and naval helicopters leading the way, more than a dozen warships in a line formation sailed towards the flagship. For the main event of the 2018 Jeju International Fleet Review, the South Korean Navy held 2 fleet inspections off the southern coast of Jeju Island. The first comprised of domestic warships, and the second review showcased an international fleet of vessels.
The South Korean Navy decided to hold the nation's third international fleet review on Jeju Island for the first time. As the event provides a venue for festivity, the citizens and world navies can enjoy together.
After domestic warships and submarines passed by the flagship, the South Korean Navy's underwater demolition team showed off their maritime infiltration skills by jumping off an aircraft from high altitude into the operation area at sea. A total of 24 South Korean warships and 15 vessels from 10 different countries, including the United States Navy's nuclear-powered aircraft carrier Ronald Reagan, took part in Thursday's landmark event. Japan decided not to participate in the fleet review amid a dispute over its naval forces' plan to fly the controversial Rising Sun flag, which is seen in Korea as a symbol of Japan's imperialistic past and its war crimes. China also canceled its plan to send a warship a day before the event without giving any detailed explanations. This year's International Fleet Review showed the South Korean Navy's battle readiness and its strong ties with its allies. 간영우, Arirang News, Jeju.
North Korea may have taken additional steps towards dismantling its Sohae Satellite Launching Station. According to 38 North, satellite images of the site from July show the regime had made some changes to the roof of a fuel structure on the launch pad. It was smooth and flat in March and May, but in July, there appeared to be roof work and objects on it. The activity has ceased since then. The U.S.-based North Korea monitoring website adds because of the low image quality, they can't be completely sure those changes are relevant to the structure's dismantlement. But if confirmed, 38 North pointed out this would be another major step for Pyongyang in keeping its promise. Seoul's top diplomat mentioned during a parliamentary audit that the Moon administration is considering easing its sanctions on North Korea. U.S. President Donald Trump responded by saying that won't happen without America's approval. And now South Korea's presidential office says Trump's response shows how strong relations are between Seoul and Washington. Park Hye-jun gets us up to speed with the developments.
South Korea's presidential office on Thursday looked to soften President Trump's latest remarks about South Korea easing its sanctions on Pyongyang. Speaking to reporters, presidential spokesperson Kim Hee-kyum said South Korea sees those remarks as a way of explaining that the two allies discuss and agree on such measures before they act, and that they only prove how closely the allies are working together. In Washington on Wednesday, the U.S. president had said Seoul won't lift sanctions on North Korea without U.S. approval. He was responding to comments by South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa, who suggested that Seoul was considering easing its own sanctions on Pyongyang to encourage the regime to give up its nukes. She later took back those remarks. Those sanctions were imposed on the North after its deadly torpedo attack on the South Korean warship Cheonan in 2010. Still, the fact that President Trump rejected the idea of South Korea canceling sanctions alone could indicate that Seoul and Washington are still in lockstep on North Korea. South Korea's Unification Minister Cho Myung-kyun said later that in fact there had been no detailed review of lifting the sanctions. He did say, however, that Seoul has been flexible in improving relations between the two Koreas. And he said the North too is getting ready for its second summit with President Trump and is doing so in view of what the international community demands and expects. Park Hye-jun, Arirang News.
It's day 2 of the National Assembly's annual audit of the government. The legislature's standing committees are inspecting government bodies in their respective areas. For debate, the possibility of Seoul lifting sanctions on North Korea and the Moon administration's economic policies. Kim Min-ji has the latest from Parliament.
The idea of the South Korean government lifting its sanctions on North Korea stirred controversy during the audit of the Unification Ministry on Thursday, with rival parties expounding very different views. The ruling party said the sanctions do need to be eased in light of the recent reconciliatory mood, and that the government needs to step up efforts to persuade the international community.
To boost inter-Korean relations, don't you think South Korea at least should be urging the United Nations to ease or lift sanctions so that denuclearization can be sped up?
At this moment in time, we feel that it's too early for that. We will need to consider the North Korea-US summit as well as progress towards denuclearization.
The opposition argued the sanctions relief can only come after denuclearization, and that the comments by U.S. President Donald Trump that Seoul needs approval from Washington to lift sanctions is a warning to the government for straying from that line. Another issue up for debate was the ratification of the Panmunjom Declaration. While the ruling party said that it's needed to ensure that the agreement has legal grounds to be implemented, even when there is a change in administration, the opposition criticized the government for not revealing the exact price tag that the people will have to shoulder, especially as the plans to modernize railroads requires the moving of a military base on the northern side.
The government needs to be precise about how much this all costs and whether it plans to move the military base using taxpayer money.
Such discussions have not taken place. We have not paid anything for the moving of a base, and even if we carry out the projects, that is something the North should take care of.
On the Labor Committee, the parties argued about the government's minimum wage hike. The opposition bloc claimed that the government's policies have caused a crisis in the job market, pointing out the decline in new jobs added, while the ruling party said structural issues are to blame. A hotly contested issue at the Industry Committee was the government's drive for nuclear-free energy. The ruling party said that it's in line with the global trend, while the opposition raised concerns that it could lead to a surge in electricity costs. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in's trip to Europe begins this weekend. The focus will be on updating European nations on diplomacy related to North Korea. The nation's top office also disclosed a detailed schedule of the upcoming tour. Shin Se-min tells us more.
President Moon Jae-in will be leaving on a 9-day trip to Europe with the objective of keeping his European counterparts in the loop on the fast-evolving peace project on the Korean Peninsula.
President Moon will be explaining the positive developments happening on the Korean Peninsula, including the respective summits between the two Koreas and the U.S., while expressing gratitude for EU member nations' support for peace in the region.
With that goal in mind, the president will be on a state visit to France for 4 days from the 13th. His schedule there includes a summit with the French president, as well as a friendly cultural event with Koreans living abroad and some French Hallyu enthusiasts. Among the performers at the event will be the record-setting K-pop sensation BTS. From the 16th, the president will be in Rome, holding summits with the Italian president and prime minister, to be followed by a highly anticipated meeting with Pope Francis, where the discussion of peace on the Korean Peninsula is likely to reach its peak. President Moon will be passing on to the pontiff an invitation to Pyongyang from North Korea's Kim Jong-un, who had reportedly told the president that he would ardently welcome the Pope should he visit the regime. And during his stay there, the president will also participate in a special Mass for Peace on the Korean Peninsula at St. Peter's Basilica, presided over by the Cardinal Secretary of State, Pietro Parolin. Then comes a 2-day stay in Brussels, where President Moon will be attending the Asia-Europe meeting, or ASEM, where he will address European nations on his administration's plans to plant the seeds of peace in the region. Finally, at the last destination of his Europe trip, the president will land in Copenhagen on the 19th for the P4G Copenhagen Summit, where he will speak about the Global Coalition on Sustainable Development. He will then arrive back home on Sunday, the 21st. The president's tight schedule covers a comprehensive set of issues, from North Korea to new industries and even sustainable development. But the presidential office underlines that the most pressing topic of all is again connecting with Europe and advancing the new order of peace and stability on the divided peninsula. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The Bank of Korea released its preliminary data on the country's current account balance for August. The nation again logged surplus, keeping the streak going for another month. Kim Hye-sung helped us look beyond the digits.
Korea posted another current account surplus in August for the 78th consecutive month. The Bank of Korea says the current account surplus hit $8.4 billion, up over $2 billion, or 40% on year on the back of strong exports. The goods account hit a surplus of $11.2 billion.
The goods account surplus increased as goods export grew more than imports. The goods export expanded 11.7% on year in August on growing global trade, rising oil and metal unit prices, and continuing demand for semiconductors.
Outbound shipments of semiconductors increased more than 31% to $11.8 billion, while petrochemical exports hit over $10 billion.
Exports of ships and home appliances dropped, but semiconductors and chemical goods exports increased by double digits. Data shows the ongoing U.S.-China trade spat hasn't affected Korean exports yet. Exports to China, mainly intermediate goods, continue to go up by an average of 20% on year in recent months.
Imports rose 9.2% on year in August to $42 billion on rising prices of global oil and other raw materials. The service account, however, logged a deficit of over $2 billion due to the growing travel account deficit. Travel account deficit rose 9% on year at $1.5 billion in August. Around 2.5 million Koreans traveled abroad during the summer vacation period, marking the second highest monthly figure on record, while 1.4 million foreigners visited Korea. Construction services account helped recoup some of the losses in the service account, recording a surplus of $1 billion, the highest figure since December 2016, thanks to more construction projects from abroad. The Bank of Korea says the primary income account surplus for August more than doubled from the same period last year to $500 million on higher interest income from overseas investments. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
The KOSPI, the nation's benchmark index, slumped to this year's lowest level following sharp losses on Wall Street. It's believed foreign investors were spooked by growing uncertainties stemming from the Washington-Beijing trade war, contagion in emerging markets, and a widening rate gap between South Korea and the United States. For details, let's turn to our Kim Ji-yeon.
Tracking losses on Wall Street, South Korea's benchmark KOSPI closed on Thursday at the lowest level so far this year, at under 2,130 points. That's a drop of more than 4% from the previous day, the seventh session in a row declines. On Thursday alone, foreign investors on the main index are estimated to have sold shares worth more than $521.7 million. The Korean currency also depreciated by 10 won from the previous day, to trade at around 1,144 won against the greenback, as investors try to reduce the risk of loss from fluctuations in exchange rates. The jitters mainly stem from the growing trade tensions between China and the U.S., fears of contagion in emerging markets, as well as a growing key interest rate gap between Korea and the U.S. And it comes after Wall Street posted its worst single-day drop in months on Wednesday, with the Dow shedding more than 800 points to close at 25,598. The NASDAQ plummeted 4%, while the S&P 500 dropped 3.3%. In particular, the tech sector was badly hit. But the Dow and the S&P 500 recorded their biggest one-day drops since February, and for the NASDAQ, it was the biggest sell-off since June 2016. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
2018 is declared a year of books here in the nation. However, its popularity is dwindling in this age of smartphones and abundant online content. The government has been trying to reverse this trend with numerous initiatives, but they had little success. Won Jung-hwan examines the changes in South Koreans' reading habits.
The season of reading has arrived, but according to statistics, the number of people cozying up with a book in their hands is falling every year. According to the Ministry of Culture's study on the nation's reading habits, almost 4 out of 10 South Korean adults did not read a single book last year. Compared to the results of the same study conducted in 2015, reading declined by 5.4 percentage points, reaching the lowest mark since data started being collected in 1994. Also, people read fewer books than in previous year, with the average number of books read dropping from 9.1 to 8.3 for adults over a 2-year period. And here are some of the reasons why people think the rate is gradually dropping.
Recently, I think reading books has taken a backseat due to various leisure activities and smartphones that are available for us.
Students are busy finding jobs, and employees often have no room to read books for pleasure.
The ministry has been pushing to increase the rate by expanding public libraries throughout the nation, fostering an environment that allows people to easily access books. In fact, the number of public libraries has been gradually increasing in the country, posting a rise of nearly 6.5% from 2015 to 2017. But ironically, the average number of adults who use public libraries per year is constantly decreasing, hinting that more public libraries is not the solution to encourage further reading.
The gap in terms of knowledge is growing wider in the country, so the government should first focus on the concept of knowledge welfare. Also, if public libraries expand their roles to serve as multicultural complexes, it will increase the chances of more people visiting and reading more books.
The government last year declared 2018 to be a year of books and set a goal of raising the percentage of the population that has read at least one book a year to 70%. 원정환, Arirang News.
For the first time, a local civil activist group handed out a special peace award to promote better cyberspace etiquette. This year, 2 laureates from Japan were honored for their efforts to protect human rights and peace by tackling cyberbullying. Yoon Jung-min has the full story.
South Korean civil activist group Int'l Internet Peace Movement invented the Internet Peace Prize to promote online etiquette and fight cyberbullying. Some 200 politicians, ambassadors to Korea, and citizens gathered at a university in Seoul on Thursday to commemorate the winners. Just as the Nobel Peace Prize honors those who fight for peace in the real world, the Internet Peace Prize honors those who protect human rights in the virtual space by encouraging positive comments and tackling cyber defamation. This year's prize went to Kawasaki Network of Citizens Against Hate Speech, a Japanese non-governmental organization, and Ken Ogiso from Japan, an advocate for internet etiquette. The Kawasaki Network comprises of 165 human rights organizations. It has been fighting against hate speech by Japanese far-right activists. It also monitors discrimination on social media and gives lectures on cyberspace ethics. The other laureate, Mr. Ogiso, has given more than 2,000 lectures on communication ethics to some 400,000 people in Japan.
Hate speech is hard to punish without proper regulation. We will keep working to eradicate hate speech by pushing for a human rights ordinance that would ban those words in the city of Kawasaki.
Hate speech, especially targeting foreigners and minorities, is a serious crime that infringes on human rights. I believe that the Internet Peace Prize, which symbolizes encouragement and compliment, will contribute to the creation of a peaceful global village.
Founded in 2007, the Int'l Foundation promotes a campaign of online peace. More than 7,000 schools and organizations in Korea are joining the movement along with politicians and citizens worldwide. The Int'l movement aims to help victims of cyberbullying overcome the psychological damage they have suffered. It also hopes this year's award can further promote human rights and mutual respect in cyberspace. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
2 astronauts made an emergency landing after a Russian Soyuz rocket suffered a malfunction in space. According to NASA, the duo survived and are unhurt. American astronaut Nick Hague and Russian cosmonaut Alexei Ovchinin boarded the booster rocket on Thursday in Kazakhstan. They were expected to dock at the International Space Center in 6 hours. But due to an engine failure, the capsule had to return to Earth just minutes after launch. NASA said rescue teams have been in contact with the Soyuz crew and are on their way to the landing site. It's time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, it's a cold autumn as we are able to see the first frost in Mount Soraksan this morning.
That's right, Daniel, and the air will still be crisp when you wake up tomorrow, feeling more like November. Now, during the day, the temperature will still rise, but it will still be about 4 degrees Celsius lower than the seasonal average. And besides the cold, the nation will be looking up to a pleasant sky tomorrow. However, Jeju, Beijing, and also Tokyo will be cloudier. And looking closer at our readings for tomorrow, Seoul, Daegu, and Gyeongju will wake up to 6 degrees Celsius, while Busan wakes up to 9, while Jeju is still warmer at 14 degrees. And during the day, we still have quite a bit of jump into the temperatures, lingering between 17 and 19 degrees. But remember, we have the wind chill. The weather will stay cool throughout the weekend, but starting next week, temperatures are expected to recover back to the seasonal average. And if you are planning a weekend outing, you can check out the beauty of autumn, as more regions have begun seeing autumn foliage, while the mountainous regions over in Gangwon province are at their peak. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for you on tonight's edition of Arirang News Center, wherever you may be tuning in from. Thanks for watching.